the brain when people are listening to these kinds of stories. I found that when people are reading teaching stories, it activates the right side of the brain much more than does reading ordinary prose. So if you're reading these stories filled with vivid imagery, filled with unusual occurrences, the right hemisphere of the brain gets more active than if you're reading, say, a history of the Peloponnesian War or more normal reading. Now, why is that important, and what does it mean? There have been a lot of theories for a long time about how the two sides of the brain works, whether the right hemisphere is the really good side and the left is the bad side, etc. But those are much too simple. Think of it this way. Think of the difference between text and context. When you're reading something, you need to know what each and every word means. You need to know where Paris is. You need to know what an airplane is. You need to know that airplane is spelled A-A-R-P-L-A-N-E, etc. But unless you can put everything together, you don't have any context. You just have a bunch of simple words. If you're looking at a room, for instance, what you see is a bunch of lines up and down, left and right. But they don't come together to make a room unless you know that you're in a room. So it's been found in a number of studies that the left hemisphere of the brain deals in lots of different situations with the elements of a situation. The lines that make up a room, for instance, the individual words that make up a sentence. The right side of the brain deals with context, how these words are put together, how the lines are put together to make a room, where you are in space, etc. So meaning isn't part of one side of the brain or the other. You can't have a story without words. You can't have a story also without knowing what the words mean and how they fit together. What this means in these stories is that the teaching stories stimulate the area of the brain that has to do with context, that has to do with putting words together, that has to do with putting things together with relationship to oneself, and this is one reason why they're so important. You ever bought something, you see a picture of a bicycle, you want to buy it for yourself or for your child. It comes from UPS, and there it is. It's a bunch of pieces. They're all laid out. There are a set of instructions, but you can't ride it. You can't go anywhere with it. You can't do anything with it. It's the pieces of a bicycle, but it's not a bicycle. In this metaphor that I'm using, what the left hemisphere does is it kind of produces the pieces. Now, there's a lot of work in producing the pieces of a bicycle, but it's still not a bicycle until someone knows how to put it together. If you're like me, that's not you, but in fact, most people know how to do this. The right side of the brain is the side that puts together the pieces of the puzzle of life. It puts together things into an organized whole wherein we can operate, we can live our life, and we can be prepared to know how to act in different situations. Some of them may be unexpected, some of them may be just routine, but without it, we wouldn't know where to go, we wouldn't know how to go. It would be just like having a bunch of pieces unassembled of a bicycle which nobody ever put together for us. This is context. It's what the stories provide. How to link items together, and this gives the child or an adult a picture of what's going on, how to act, and what may befall him or her in the future. And of course, the act of reading stories to the child also affects the adult. These stories are designed to have effects on both the reader and the person who's being read to. The child may learn to anticipate what's going on in this and many other stories, but the adult may also have his or her mind taken along some unfamiliar lines. Let's go back to the first story for a second, just to remind you of one of the things I'm talking about. I mentioned it just a bit earlier. There are lots and lots of stories where the hero fights and defeats the dragon, but this story is very different. What happens in this story? Neem tells the dragon he'll have to drive him out of his cave because he's breathing fire over everyone. Then the dragon explains what's happening. He recognizes his problem, and he even knows the solution, but he needs help. To Neem, the dragon knows he needs help to stop breathing fire over everyone, and he knows Neem can help him once he's whole. So at one level, this is about helping each other through negotiation and cooperation, and it's not confrontational at all. It's a different way to look at conflicts. It's a different way to resolve different situations, and it may give you a different insight into the way people are structured. It could be that someone, for instance, who has a lot of force in their life at some time is really lacking a place to put that force. And there are many, many other interpretations, all of which I'm sure you'll be able to think about. But what this story does is it gives you a look at just a slightly different way of looking at things. And of course, the Bellin story as well gives you a look at a different way to look at something that might be considered dangerous. These kinds of things are obviously very important for kids in today's world and for adults. And as we work more and more with these teaching stories, we see their relevance to changing circumstances in our life and in the life of our culture, which is why these stories are so continuously interesting and so continuously rewarding. And they not only have an effect on the mind and cognitive development, but on the brain and on future actions of us and our children. Thank you.